Hello, I am Alex Venuto. I'm the Acting Deputy Director of the World Urban Pavilion in Regent Park, powered by Daniels. That is the space you're joining us here today. I recognize many, many familiar faces, so it's great to see you again. And I also recognize new faces, so it's great to see new faces coming to the World Urban Pavilion. I'm going a little off script, Fatima, but I always like to start off these meetings by saying, the Pavilion is a global knowledge exchange hub for sustainable urbanization, and it very much is a community space. We want you to use this as your space to advocate your voices, your priorities in Regent Park community, elevate those voices on how you can achieve, what you perceive and what you value in your communities as well. So please bring your conversations, bring your dialogues, bring your activities, your events to the Pavilion. Happy to collaborate with you. Many of you have already used that. I'm looking at Waleed, who I cannot see right now, but Waleed, there he is. Rabia, I know you've been talking to me as well about having something. So fantastic. So thank you all for joining us today at the World Urban Pavilion in Regent Park for this presentation of Daniels Regent Park Spotlight Report. This event has been jointly organized by the Daniels Corporation, the World Urban Pavilion in Regent Park, and the Social Development Plan Pavilion Working Group to provide Regent Park community members an opportunity to learn about Daniels' work in the neighborhood. In January 2023, Daniels released its second annual impact report entitled Bringing Impact to Life 2021-2022 Impact Report. Included in the report is Daniels' account of their involvement in the Regent Park Revitalization. The report shares what Daniels considers the 6 key building blocks of inclusive communities and discusses how they have utilized these approaches in Regent Park over the last 17 years. The presentation this evening is meant to provide an opportunity for Daniels to share their Regent Park Spotlight Report with the broader community and answer questions you have about the report. The World Urban Pavilion in Regent Park is really happy to be able to create this unique opportunity for our broader community to learn about this report. The World Urban Pavilion in Regent Park is a global hub to exchange knowledge and innovation on urban development and sustainability. And events like these are exactly what enables us and others to share insights into best practices and lessons learned. It's also a great opportunity for folks to meet with neighbors, ask questions, and engage. So we're very happy to have you here. Of course, very happy. Now, before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. After some further introductions by Marlene Jananova, and a land acknowledgement by Kelsey McKibben from the Daniels team, we'll jump into the presentation. Following that, we'll have a panel discussion and time for question and answer. Dinner will be served after sunset around 7:45 p.m. And now I'd like to introduce Marlene, co-chair of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association and SDP Stakeholders Table. And I'll also like to mention that she's also on the World Urban Pavilion Steering Committee as well. Marlene, please.
You'll excuse me if I was a little surprised. But thank you so much for joining us all here today. We're all very pleased to be here. It's actually quite an honor to be here. We are all friends of Daniels. Is this for me? It's not for you. And certainly as a member of RPNA, we have much to be pleased about that we're here with Daniels to honor what Daniels has done here today. I would like to speak at another time. But I'll tell you, one of the things that you'll hear about wonderful things that Daniels has done here. But for us in Regent Park, the thing that has made it remarkable, you're going to lower it for me. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. One thing that has made it remarkable is that Daniels people have been here. That is, okay. And that is pretty astounding for a builder, to see the head of the company, his direct reports, anybody we ever have to deal with are here on the ground. Not just for a few of us, but for anybody who wants to be in touch, they're here. They talk to us, they listen, they take it back. We get some of the things we want. We don't get everything we want. This is a work in progress, Regent Park. We're learning from our experiences, all of us. but the thing they are learners. They take what they learn, they move on, they do other bigger and better things. I think this is a great report. I think you've done an excellent job. Those of you who've put it together, it was a great read. You've done a really good job putting it together. I found out things I didn't know. I think you've been wonderful supporters of the social development plan. And for anyone who's ever put a touch on them, you know that they have supported many, many programs that we've done aside from anything else that was in any kind of a program. If we wanted to do something, we've gone to Daniels and we've asked, can you support us? And almost always they have, okay? And I'm very grateful for that. And I think the other thing is, how many builders write a love letter to their neighborhood? We will always, even when they're gone, will have the journey. And our young people who have performed in the journey year after year, that will always be part of our legacy. It will be there, and Daniels will never go away. So I am, and I know that many of our people are deeply grateful for the things that Daniels has done here. And to you, Mitch, and my dear friend over here, and Gila. You probably launched Gila's career as a songwriter, producer. If she ever decides to leave Daniels, she has someplace to go. That's always comforting. So I want to thank you all, and thank you all for being here, and welcome everyone.
Awesome. Okay, great. I won't touch it. Thank you. All right, can everybody hear me all right? Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kelsey McKibben. I'm a manager of social impact here at Daniels, and I am also the chair of our Indigenous Inclusion and Engagement DEI subcommittee. I will be reading our land acknowledgement today. Our work toward both truth and reconciliation continues, and we are committed to educating ourselves and understanding the truth about our shared history with Indigenous peoples. In keeping with our commitment to reconciliation, we acknowledge the inherent and sacred relationship Indigenous peoples have with the lands, air, and water. We acknowledge that these are treaty lands, and for thousands of years, the GTA has been the traditional gathering place shared by many nations, including the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the shared territory of the Neutrals, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. As we work in and build communities across the GTA, we are committed to listening to and learning from Indigenous peoples, drawing wisdom from generations of living in harmony with the land and the natural environment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kelsey. Just get my... All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me okay, or if it's a bit too loud. We're okay? Okay. So as Alex mentioned earlier, in January 2023, Daniels released our second annual impact report, and included in it was a spotlight report on our work in Regent Park over the last 17 years. And, we chose Regent Park as our focus for this spotlight report because we wanted to share our Regent Park story. As we wrap up our work in phases 1 to 3 over the next several years, our role in the community is changing. This evolution gives us an opportunity to reflect on our work, both on the successes and the lessons learned. And there are so many accounts of the Regent Park story and the Regent Park Revitalization out there in the world. And our goal for this report was to share our experience in our own words and present how our approach to building inclusive communities which is based on 39 years of experience as a developer builder in the GTA, was applied here. So, just giving you that background there. Slide, please, Darren. I'm going to be saying slide, please, Darren, quite a bit tonight, so just bear with me. So, although the scale of the transformation in Regent Park is unique, it's our fundamental belief that the building blocks of inclusive communities are the same no matter how large or small the community. We believe that inclusive communities are built when we take a whole of community approach, when we prioritize the development of mixed use and community spaces, when we invest in affordable housing, community engagement, and local economic development. These are our 6 building blocks. Slide. So before we dive into how these 6 building blocks were applied here in Regent Park, I want to share a bit about Regent Park's history. Now, as members of the community, many of you who are joining us this evening are familiar with Regent Park history, but I think it still bears repeating because we know that this community has and continues to welcome new residents each year, some of whom are in the audience tonight, and they may need a primer on their new home. Slide, please. So built by the federal government in the late 1940s and 1950s, the Regent Park neighborhood originally consisted of 2,083 social housing homes on 69 acres in Toronto's downtown east. The community was predominantly residential. The design was based on a garden city planning rationale, and while the neighborhood boasted large tracts of green space, they were surrounded by inward-facing housing and buildings and winding paths. Most public streets had been removed, cutting the community off from the rest of the city. As a result of funding cuts to social housing programs, the homes of the community were left to deteriorate within a short period of time. Successive downloading of responsibility for social housing, first from the federal government and then the provincial government, and subsequently from the province of Ontario to the city of Toronto, made matters worse. Beginning also in the 1970s, as Canada welcomed newcomers from around the world, Regent Park quickly became one of the most diverse communities in the country. However, the lack of investment in social supports and economic opportunities, coupled with the physical deterioration and isolation of the neighborhood, meant that the community faced significant challenges. Over the last few decades of the 20th century, Regent Park was seen by people outside of the community as a place best avoided, a highly stigmatized neighborhood in which drugs, gangs, and guns and violence were the experience of everyday life. Despite this reputation, which was compounded by media stereotyping and over-policing, Regent Park was a vibrant and close-knit community. Advocacy has also always been a part of the community's culture. Despite its reputation, when ownership and control of the city's social housing stock, which included Regent Park, was downloaded to the City of Toronto in 2002, Regent Park residents seized the opportunity to work with the new social housing agency, Toronto Community Housing, to launch a community revitalization process. Unlike many attempts at inner-city revitalizations in North America, the transformation of Regent Park evolved from the ground up, rather than the top down. Local voices have been at the center of the conversation from the outset. In 2006, after a lengthy public procurement process, TCHC selected Daniels as their development partner to initiate the Regent Park revitalization. Unfolding over the course of the last 17 years, the first 3 phases of the revitalization have covered 53 of the 69 acres and prioritized both physical development as well as social development. Over the last 17 years, in phases 1 to 3, a total of 4,372 market units have been completed or are under construction, and 1,877 TCHC units have been completed or are under construction. Now, I want to take you through our building blocks and how we applied them in Regent Park. Our first building block is a whole of community approach. So we really believe that builders and developers have a unique opportunity to advance inclusion and resilience, build equity and community wealth, create affordable and accessible homes and spaces, and prioritize sustainability and local economic development. Physical construction isn't enough. We must go beyond buildings. So Daniels thinks about the whole of community. That's why we invest in social, cultural, and economic infrastructure. We work to ensure that these essential parts of our community will be as strong as the bricks and mortar that we build. So what did this look like in Regent Park? In Regent Park, we didn't just think about the revitalization by phase or block by block, we worked hand in hand with TCHC and local residents to holistically conceptualize the whole 69 acres of community. One important example of this is the 6-acre park. So although the original zoning bylaw identified land for a 6-acre park in the heart of the neighborhood, the initial phasing plan prescribed that it was going to be built in phase 5. Given that social cohesion and integration was such a key role or key goal identified by TCHC and local residents for the revitalization, it was clear to our team at Daniels that waiting years until the park's construction would be a missed opportunity. Parks are crucial to building social fabric. In a revitalization, the community building potential of a park is further magnified. So we believe that community spaces where TCHC tenants and residents of new condo buildings could meet, play, exercise, get to know one another, had to be built early on in the Regent Park revitalization if the revitalization was to succeed as an inclusive mixed-income community. Thinking about the future of Regent Park and what the whole of community would look like at the end of revitalization, our team worked with the local city councilor, Pam McConnell, and her team, and our partners at TCHC to amend the phasing plan and through a rezoning process and move up the construction to phase 2. And this decision had really an enormous impact on social cohesion and inclusion in the neighborhood. A second example that demonstrates how the whole of community approach was applied here in Regent Park are the Regent Park Athletic Grounds. And they weren't supposed to be built at all. They weren't part of the original zoning bylaw. But by working with TCHC and the city and community residents, Daniels was able to amend the zoning bylaw and designate land for the creation of the Regent Park Athletic Grounds within phase 3. Our second building block is mixed-use development. Focusing on mixed-use development means that we have looked for opportunities to incorporate spaces where people can live, but also work, shop, learn, and play. Local businesses, banks, cultural amenities, educational and medical institutions, they all provide crucial services to our communities. And they also create avenues for employment, capacity building, and community development. Harnessing the power of mixed-use development is a priority for Daniels because it is fundamental to building inclusive communities. In Regent Park, adding a mix of commercial, institutional, and cultural spaces to the spectrum of housing opportunities was also integral to the success of the revitalization. So our approach to commercial in Regent Park. Our approach to commercial and retail spaces in Regent Park is a specific example of how we took a mixed-use development approach. At the time of the 2006 revitalization, there were no significant retail businesses operating in Regent Park. Residents looking to visit a bank, buy groceries, go to a coffee shop had no choice but to trek outside of the community. Those looking for a job in the vicinity of their home had to search outside the 69-acre neighborhood for employment as well. Understanding that the creation of new community spaces and commercial spaces is a key goal of the revitalization, Daniels worked with TCHC to develop a commercial and retail strategy that would provide crucial services to the community and create local economic development through employment. In selecting commercial retailers, we intentionally chose national brand retailers, demonstrating that large, well-known operators were prepared to invest in the revitalization. It was also vital that we considered price point. As a mixed income community, it's our goal to provide something for everyone in Regent Park. Commercial retailers have also been eager to participate in local employment initiatives. Over 250 jobs for Regent Park residents have been created through commercial retailers like Freshco, RBC, Tim Hortons, Shoppers Drug Mart, Paintbox Bistro, and Cafe Zuzu. In addition, as a result of community feedback and a desire to support small businesses and local community organizations that offer a diverse range of products and services, Daniels also launched a social impact commercial program in 2018 where we offer commercial spaces to local entrepreneurs and organizations at subsidized rates. This community commercial program aims to cultivate a spirit of entrepreneurship, support community groups, and create economic development opportunities for local residents. Our third building block for creating inclusive communities is affordable housing. Removing barriers to housing, whether financial or physical, has been one of Daniels' primary impact goals since our inception. Affordable housing is part of the fundamental infrastructure of a resilient city. For a community to be truly inclusive, People of a range of socioeconomic backgrounds and income levels must feel welcome and be welcomed too. In Regent Park, restoring the quality of social housing was a key goal of the revitalization, and we've worked with TCHC to deliver 1,261 rent geared to income replacement homes and 403 new affordable rental homes to the highest quality standard. We've also found creative ways to integrate additional opportunities for affordable housing through partnerships, innovation, and financial assistance programs. One way we've integrated opportunities for affordable housing is through innovative affordable home ownership programs. So affordable home ownership is one of the most powerful tools for breaking the cycle of poverty and building wealth. Over the last 17 years, Daniels has implemented 3 programs that have created direct pathways into home ownership in Regent Park: the Foundation Program, the First Home Boost Program, and the Partnership for Affordable Home Ownership Program. The Foundation and First Home Boost programs were implemented early in the revitalization and provided down payment assistance to first-time buyers with government funding and were administered by the Affordable Housing Office at the City of Toronto. Daniels played a leadership role in the creation of these programs, which were modeled after a similar down payment assistance program we created in partnership with government at our Lakeshore Village development. The Foundation program was geared specifically to tenants living in TCHC in Regent Park, and supported with 40% down payment assistance, whereas the Boost program was open to first-time buyers looking to transition from renting to owning with 10% down payment assistance. The Foundation program enabled 17 families living in TCHC to become first-time homeowners within Regent Park. Through Boost, 211 individuals and families have become first-time homeowners, and in that number as well, some TCHC residents too. And then in 2022, Daniel stepped up to fund, create, and launch a 3rd program, the Partnership for Affordable Homeownership. With an investment of up to $5 million, the program is completely funded by Daniels and provides down payment assistance for up to 50% of the purchase price of a new home at our Daniels on Parliament condominium in Regent Park. To date, 9 individuals and families have become homeowners at Daniels on Parliament through the Partnership for Affordable Homeownership program. Another way we've integrated affordable opportunities into Regent Park was by creating additional affordable rental opportunities outside of TCHC's rental portfolio in the neighborhood. In Phase 3, Daniels worked with partners to pioneer a new approach, the Partnership for Affordable Living. At the Evolve rental building, along with our partner Sun Life, Daniels entered into a public-private partnership agreement with Wood Green Community Services, an established social service agency, and the City of Toronto to integrate long-term affordable rental living for mother-led families through Wood Green's Homeward Bound program. As builders and developers, we understand that city building is a shared responsibility and that affordable housing is part of the fundamental infrastructure of a resilient city. Community engagement. So our 4th building block for creating inclusive communities is community engagement. At Daniels, our approach to community engagement is intentional. We put community at the center. We invest time in listening to and learning from local residents and stakeholders. And we work hard to build trust and identify opportunities for collaboration. Our approach is also ongoing. Our community engagement doesn't start or end with construction. Rather than passively waiting for community to share feedback on development proposals, our team seeks out opportunities and input by embarking on what we've come to call listen and learn tours. So right from the get-go, our team set out to meet as many local stakeholders as possible. Our president and CEO, Mitchell Cohen, and partner in charge of the revitalization, Martin Blake, embarked on countless listen and learn tours to hear from and understand the diverse perspectives of community members and local social service agencies in respect to the revitalization. What places and programs would bring people of diverse cultural backgrounds together? How could those initiatives be financed? How could the stigma associated with Regent Park be overcome and the psychological barriers between Regent Park and neighboring communities be torn down? How could the revitalization be leveraged as a platform for local economic development? How could residents share their history and lived experiences with the rest of the city? Feedback from these early conversations was extremely valuable and enabled our team to work with the community to chart a course with respect to the most important social infrastructure investments. The relationship we built during that time also allowed us to create feedback loops that have helped us respond to emergent community needs, iterate, and innovate with community partners. Over the course of our work in Regent Park, we have heard from community residents, grassroots groups, and agencies that priorities outlined in the Regent Park Social Development Plan are crucial to a successful revitalization. As a result, delivering on the SDP became a core part of our understanding of our responsibility to the community and a key part of our development approach in phases 1, 2, and 3. In response to community priorities, we've supported a number of community events and initiatives that create opportunities for social cohesion and community building. We've also supported training and employment programs directed particularly towards youth and purchased local art, supported community safety initiatives, and others. We also contributed $250,000 of seed funding to support the United Way in launching a $1 million social impact investment fund. And this was important because it was locally led and locally invested in the SDP. Our fifth building block is what we call spaces that build social fabric. We believe that inclusive communities are built through intentional design. Parks, public plazas, gardens, community centers, and recreation spaces are all gathering places where neighbors connect and communities thrive. That's why we design and build innovative amenities within our condominium communities and our rental communities and in the community at large, incorporating arts, cultural, and community spaces in the areas all surrounding them. We recognize the role that a sense of connection plays when it comes to overall well-being and social cohesion. Over the course of the Regent Park Revitalization, Daniels has invested in, designed, and built spaces that have strengthened the social fabric of the neighborhood. We've also supported community residents, grassroots groups, and local organizations to program and animate these spaces, from community gardens to public plazas. To the Regent Park Athletic Grounds and Daniels Spectrum, these spaces and the programming they support have helped realize the vision of an inclusive community. So the biggest example of a space that builds social fabric in Regent Park is Daniels Spectrum. Although the need for an arts and cultural center was clearly documented in the social development plan, the initial zoning bylaw for the revitalization did not initially allocate land for that use, nor did the business plan. Daniels recognized this fundamental flaw and believed that the space envisioned by local residents was an essential addition to the neighborhood and the broader city. We knew that an arts and cultural hub would be a catalyst for building social cohesion in the neighborhood. Based on our experience in Toronto's entertainment district with the development and construction of the Toronto International Film Festival's Bell Light Box, the TIFF Bell Light Box, we had seen the power of arts and cultural destinations in creating transformation in a neighborhood. So, the zoning bylaw was amended to make land available for a 60,000 square foot arts and cultural center within phase 2. TCHC agreed to leverage its land through a 50-year lease agreement at a nominal fee, and that really was an initial step that kickstarted the creation of Daniels Spectrum. With land as the City of Toronto's contribution through TCHC, the balance of the funding for the building came from the federal and provincial governments, and a capital campaign for $10 million led by the Toronto Artscape Foundation, with Daniels playing a lead role. Operated by Toronto Artscape Inc., Daniels Spectrum is innovative in that it is also community-owned. It is a community-owned asset. A new community-based nonprofit, Regent Park Arts Development, was created to develop and own the building. The hub has also provided access to below-market office and programming spaces for community organizations and agencies, many of whom have been serving the neighborhood since before the revitalization. In terms of community investment, including what Daniels has contributed to initiatives and programming, Daniels Spectrum, and what has been stewarded by Daniels from our private sector partners and philanthropic donors, there have been really significant investments in the community. Local economic development. This is our final building block of inclusive communities. And at Daniels, we really believe that development must generate positive outcomes for all stakeholders, not just the developer. Inclusive communities provide opportunities for everyone to reach their full potential. And we use our business as a positive force by creating opportunities for inclusive local economic development, prioritizing local hiring and capacity building, and social procurement as well. We've honed this approach over the last 17 years working in Regent Park and working with TCHC, local residents, community organizations, and social service agencies. We've developed a robust local economic development strategy for Regent Park that includes local hiring, workforce development, and social procurement. So I'll share a little bit about local employment with you first. So from the outset, residents of Regent Park looked at the revitalization as a platform for capacity building and local economic development. In recognition of this underlying principle, TCHC was intentional in naming local hiring as a key goal of the redevelopment, and Daniels made it a top priority from the beginning. Working with employment service agencies in Regent Park, Daniels implemented a first source hiring approach to reach candidates living in the neighborhood. The economic impact of this approach has been significant. Since the beginning of the revitalization in 2007, Daniels has directly employed 55 TCHC residents alone, with over $7.2 million in economic value created through wages and salaries. In addition, with our trades and consultants working on the revitalization project, we included language in contracts that underscored the importance of local hiring and asked contractors to participate in the Regent Park Employment Initiative. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we also took a similar approach with commercial tenants, facilitating job creation partnerships with George Brown, Freshco, Royal Bank, Shoppers Drug Mart, Tim Hortons, Paintbox Bistro, Cafe Zuzu, and other commercial tenants within the community. To date, 490 residents have been employed directly as a result of those local hiring initiatives, such that many residents now live and work in their community. We also developed workforce development programs focused on training and skill building. There are 3 key programs we developed. Moving Toward Opportunity, a youth employment initiative for 16 to 18-year-olds residing in Regent Park and surrounding neighborhoods that provides youth with pre-employment training and paid summer internship opportunities. CRAFT, a workforce development program that provides youth 18 to 29 with 4 weeks of paid training at the College of Carpenters and Allied Trades Training Center, and a 10-week paid job placement with Daniels Trades on our construction sites, as well as an apprenticeship actually with Carpenters Local 27. And there's also the Higher Learning Initiative, an innovative program that assists skilled professionals educated abroad by providing ongoing career and academic advising, free credential assessments, and fully funded education bursaries to use towards professional and academic upgrading courses at the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. Since they were launched, these programs have had significant impact. Moving Toward Opportunity has engaged 162 youth participants and generated over $480,000 in local economic development through wages. CRAFT has engaged 55 youth participants who've gone on to apprenticeships, creating over $350,000 in local economic development through wages. And the Higher Learning Initiative has provided 52 internationally educated professionals with training and academic upgrading support. And although full-time employment and training opportunities are also important, the reality is that not everyone is looking for a full-time job or a career pathway. Individuals seeking alternatives to participate in the local economy, like artists or entrepreneurs or part-time caterers, are often left behind. To create a broad range of opportunities for community residents to participate in local economic development, Daniels has also developed a robust social procurement program in the neighborhood. And this has really also been implemented as part of our local economic development approach. Through our social procurement initiatives, we've bought art from local artists and artisans, hired local caterers, local photographers, and a local security company. So, we really are immensely proud of all of the work that we've done in Regent Park, the buildings we've constructed, but also the relationships that we've built. It's really the relationships with the partners that we've cultivated over the last 17 years, including the city, TCHC, community members, not-for-profit organizations, employment service agencies, trades and consultants in the construction industry, commercial and other private sector partners, that have allowed us to push the envelope and build a truly inclusive community. So we thank you for your partnership. Now, I'd like to continue this presentation, and in continuing this presentation, I'd like to invite up some more members of our Daniels team to join me up here for a panel discussion as we dive deeper into the report. So I'd like to welcome Mitchell Cohen, President and CEO, Ramo Agostino, Vice President of Development, and Gila Omarkale, Vice President of Social Impact at Daniels. So, in the report, we refer to a lengthy public procurement process in 2006 that resulted in the selection of Daniels as the development partner for the Regent Park Revitalization. Can you speak to why Daniels was interested in the opportunity and what our team brought to the table? Mitchell, maybe this is a question for you. I am, yeah.
You're asking me. Why were we interested in the Regent Park revitalization? Fatima, you're asking me to tell my life story.
Basically, yeah.
Probably many of you have heard a lot of this, but since you've asked, we were immediately interested in the Regent Park opportunity when we heard about it. And the reason goes back to my entire life, in fact, because in Montreal, in 1973, I was working for the YMCA as a community worker in a community pretty much exactly like Regent Park, not at the scale, but it was a community built right after the war, the same time frame, the same 3-story brick walk-ups. And interestingly, you talked about Garden City, Regent Park, Garden City. The community that I was working in as a YMCA community worker was called the Gardens Apartments, of course, built on the same model. The difference in Montreal at that moment in time is that the government had sold that property to a private developer. And that private developer decided he was going to evict all of the tenants all at one time. He'd put them on 30-day, month-to-month leases and decided he was going to evict those tenants all at one time and demolish the buildings and build 3 22-story condos. I'm working in the neighborhood. We're doing social programs, health programs, recreation programs with kids. Crazy stuff we were doing. We took kids winter camping. Can you imagine me out there winter camping? Trapping rabbits? We did it. But I came back from one of those trips with the kids and the tenants got their notices and 30 days to get out. Fortuitously, I had just read about a new federal government program that was established in 1973 to support groups like this group of tenants and gave them the opportunity to actually form a nonprofit housing co-op and either buy or lease the buildings that they were in. So I went down that road very quickly, as quick as I could on my typewriter. I typed a letter to CMHC and I said, I understand you have funding that you could support this community group. And the very next day, $8,800 was granted. With that money, and a letter from the federal government, we were able to stop the developer in his tracks. Marching on City Hall, 300 and some people, the media was there saying, do not allow this demolition permit to be issued. Don't do it. There's nowhere for these tenants to go. And the tenants spoke for themselves. I did not speak for them. There is nowhere for us to go in this city. And if we're pushed out, we don't know what our future will be. And look, we have a letter from CMHC, the federal government, saying that they will support us in doing a study on creating a co-op. Fast forward, I worked with the tenants. We created we did the work that proved that it was possible under the federal government program to turn this into a co-op. And then I negotiated with the developer, my very first negotiation with a private sector developer. And the result was a true Canadian sort of compromise example, which worked brilliantly. Half of the community became a co-op and half, he developed 2 towers instead of 3. He felt he won, the community felt they had won, and that Gardens Co-op is there today. They've paid off their mortgage. So that's how I got started in this world of affordable housing. And I came to Toronto a few years later and got a job in the Co-op Housing Federation of Toronto, creating housing co-ops. And we did that, and we created co-ops across the city, St. Lawrence neighborhood, Bathurst Quay, all around the city. You probably know some of them. And then in 1984, the federal government terminated all support for co-op housing. And it was at that moment that I came to the private sector, joined this gentleman named John Daniels. We call him Jack. And Jack said, go forward and build a company based on how you feel good about what you want to do and your values. And I said, Jack, thank you. That is a blessing. And some of you may have met Jack over the years. I hope that he's been here a few times. Jack passed away last fall. But he was true to his word throughout all of 38 years that we were partners in allowing us to build a company based on a set of values around inclusion, around creating affordable housing, around a business as a platform for progressive social change. So with that backdrop, when the RFQ and then the RFP came out for Regent Park, it was like, hallelujah. This has our name on it. This is something we need to do. This is something that speaks to us. It speaks to me and to the rest of our team. And even before, we had heard that TCH was going to put out the RFQ first. But at that moment, my partner, Ramo, Martin, we came into this neighborhood and started to knock on doors. And we started to do what you just talked about, listen and learn. And we learned so much about this neighborhood, and we made friends back then that we still have in this neighborhood today. And here's the thing, when the RFP came out, we looked at it and we thought, this will never work. At least it'll never work for us. Because what Toronto Community Housing was looking for at that time with that RFP was someone to buy the density for condos, build the condos, and pretty much that was it. Use best efforts to hire people locally, but that was a footnote at the bottom. We looked at that RFP and we said, we can't work under this kind of, construct. We have to rethink it. The only way, in our view, that we felt it could work was by virtue of a true public-private partnership where TCH and us and the community are on the same team. And Toronto Community Housing, at that moment, looked at the RFP responses. Ours was for a public-private partnership. We didn't tick any of the boxes in the RFP, not one. We said public-private partnership, and we lost that bid. We didn't win. But we felt good about what we had done. We put a lot of thought into how we would work in community, with community, if we had that opportunity, and we lost the bid. And about 4 months later, we get a call saying the TCH is reopening the process because they couldn't come to terms with the developer who told them how much money he was going to pay for the market housing density. They never came to terms. They never reached an agreement. So TCH put out their proposal call a second time to 4 of us who were on the short list. Am I going on way too long? I'll try to wrap it up. I'll try. So we got that proposal call and we sat there in our office and we read this thing and it was, guess what? The exact same proposal call. Hadn't changed. But then, and it's like 4 inches thick. You know that. You've seen them. We get to the very last page of this proposal call and I turn the page and there's one paragraph. And it says, or the proponent is able to make a proposal based on an alternative development framework. Well, hello, hallelujah. That is exactly what we called our previous bid, an alternative development framework, which was truly a partnership based on sharing of risk and sharing of reward. And at that moment in time, TCH and their board and the city embraced that partnership. And that's the basis of what we've done over the last 17 years, was grounded in where I come from, where we come from as a company, and on the foundation of listen, learn, and grow together.
Thanks, Mitchell. Okay, maybe one for Ramo. How about that? Ramo, from a development perspective, could you elaborate on the whole of community approach in which we didn't just think about the revitalization block by block or phase by phase, but holistically, and maybe use the Regent Park Athletic Grounds as an example.
Okay, it's tough to follow Mitchell, so I'll try. I think when we look at the Regent Park Athletic Grounds, we look at what's happened sort of in phase 3, and that's sort of the end goal. But I think it's really important to sort of take us back where we were in phase 1. Once we sort of jumped in, once we sort of started doing the listen and learns. But I think what was really important in phase 1 is TCHC and the city had developed a real strong foundation of a plan. And it was really important to get started, to make sure that, the city, the residents, and everyone was seeing that, yes, there was going to be a rental replacement building built. I still remember a story where I was walking in Regent Park one day when the TCHC first rental building where the district energy system sits, walking by, and there were probably about 5 levels of parking below grade, and hearing someone say, they've run out of money, they're going to stop. That was sort of the skepticism, I think, that was out in the community. It's just so I tell you that story, so I share a little bit of the skepticism, even while we were under construction. So it was a real importance to get buildings underway. So we looked at the first rental building. We looked at how we could rationalize things and get it built. And then afterwards looked at the rest of phase 1 and really what I would call with tweaking. And a lot of that tweaking was around good urban design principles, using the design review panel, looking at one call that talked about a different massing for a building and doing something a little different, but fundamentally executing the plan that was there. And while we were doing that, there was a lot more going on. We didn't have a team as large as we do now that was working in Regent Park. And I was doing a lot of, call it what Gila and Fatima were doing, because we didn't have Gila and Fatima at the time. And it was going to meetings, and I remember going to community meetings, RPNA meetings over in the community center, that was in North Regent Park, and going to the employment meetings and listening and learning a lot of what was happening there. So this was, again, way back in 2006 and 2007 while we were getting things started. And what was really important, and we were there, and I will say, with TCH, with the city's commitment, especially at the beginning, the resources that was there to go to meetings where there were all senior people of the city, listening and learning and making sure that it was getting the first phase underway. But as we were halfway through the first phase, or roughly halfway through, it was about what's next. What can we do to start looking at phase 2, 3, 4, and 5? And with that, the city and TCH were open to a conversation, even though we hadn't necessarily been signed up for phases 2, 3, 4, and 5, to look at how can we reimagine those phases. And a lot of you will know what the original phasing plan called for Regent Park. Phase 2 wasn't the park. It wasn't south side of Dundas Street. It was this fragmented approach to phasing. There was a rationale behind it, but I think as we were going through and learning through phase 1, all of us collectively, the city, TCHC, and Daniel sort of said, that's not the right approach. What can we do to advance the park? If you remember the aquatic center that's in the park used Section 37 monies that were originally directed, I believe, to aquatic center that was supposed to be at Lord Dufferin Park School. And that didn't happen, and they took the advantage to use that as the catalyst to stimulate the park moving forward. But that was through all discussions that was happening amongst this group that, quite frankly, speaking to an alignment of interests. So while we were there as partners with the city, with TCHC, with the community, listening to these things and finding ways. And one of the things, and I don't want to go on too long either, and I know we want to get to the athletic grounds, but we look to things like developing the park and then changing the plan, allowing phase 2. I always said that every phase involved a rezoning. And I'm really proud, and I'm sure TCHC is proud, is that all those rezonings got through relatively quickly. Why? Because there was continuous community engagement throughout the entire process. There was never an appeal because we all got to the same spot, because every phase, the changes that were being made was bringing forward a community benefit. It was bringing forward the park, the aquatic center, Daniel Spectrum. It was bringing forward that social infrastructure that was needed and the right public spaces that were needed. In phase 3, going to the athletic grounds came out and can still remember Mitchell with his whiteout, sort of saying, you know, out of conversations that came out of the park that said, we don't have athletic spaces for kids to play. I remember coming down Nelson Mandela Park School, one of the parents, I think, saying we never played a home game as part of a school event because they always had to go outside of Regent Park to go to a sports field. And Mitchell with his whiteout, as he always does, and every single phase, was taking out these little parkettes all over in Regent and creating this sort of park and saying, why can't we put it right here? We already have a rink. Why get rid of the rink? Why can't we? And find a creative way to do that so that the city could take monies that were going to be used in these small parkettes, put them into something larger, going out and looking, seeking other private partnerships with MLSE to bring that in. And these types of things can only happen when you have aligned interest and when everyone is there not looking at just the first building and how much density and how much profit and how much, you know, it's really important in terms of the overall goal for Regent Park and the Regent Park business plan, but looking at it and saying, what's the right building here? What's right today? And how do we set it up so it's right for the future also? And so in a real long and probably convoluted way, you know, that's sort of the approach. It really was and still is that sort of engagement of all parties to sort of look at how can you continuously improve the plan. And you know, there were things that, you know, we learned along the way. It wasn't that we always got everything right. The reason we changed things in every phase is because we saw things that weren't working and we're able to then adapt and move forward.
Thanks, Ramo. Okay, maybe I'll give you time. Yeah, Ramo gets one too. Awesome, great. Maybe we'll.
Gila, definitely.
Yeah, well, let's have one for Gila. So Gila, let's do that. So the report describes investments in the social development plan. Can you provide some examples of the SDP priorities that Daniel's invested in?
Sure, that was something I was around for. Hi, everyone. I am going to acknowledge what Marlene said. Daniels has launched my career so far that in 20 minutes I have to be on a virtual conference in Australia. So you'll have to excuse me for cutting out early, but I'm happy to be here and take as many questions while I can.
Just as long as you don't move there.
Depends on how well this presentation goes. So investments on the social development plan, this is something that's come up quite a bit in community conversations. And when we look back to the early days of the revitalization, when the contracts were initially signed in 2006, the community benefits and the community investment movement was not there where it is today. In fact, our community commitment at that point was a local employment target. There was no financial commitment in terms of dollars or millions of dollars committed by Daniels in contract to the revitalization, unlike more recent processes both in Regent Park and across the city. What we believed at that time, as Mitchell and Ramo has shared, is that the revitalization couldn't be successful if the only investments were in bricks and mortar. And so very consciously, we looked at the SDP, and through the 72 recommendations in the initial SDP, 75, Deanie's reminding me, so I've probably missed 3 somewhere, and the listen and learn tours, we formed a set of priorities really grounded in this idea of how to create social cohesion and social integration. And one of the examples I'll go back to that some folks in the room might remember was around the Regent Park Farmers Market. There was a whole section in the recommendations that talked about bringing people together over food and urban agriculture and honoring the community's roots in growing and the, community gardens and the front yard gardens that they had created. And so we looked at how do we actually honor that and bring that forward and really use food as that unifier. And at that time, the community agencies were doing really critical work through the transition of the revitalization and didn't have the capacity at that moment
to take on some of these SDP initiatives. And so it was Daniels and TCHC who stepped up on Regent Park Boulevard, and for 3 years, I was the market manager, hosting markets, organizing vendors to come in, and that idea has now blossomed into the Taste of Regent Park, which we love seeing every single year. So that seeding, that investment on those early days has cultivated what is now one of the best things that Toronto, not just Regent Park, has to offer. The other example, which Fatima touched on in the presentation, was Daniel Spectrum. So again, looking at the social development plan and the zoning bylaw, seeing that we were saying these two documents had equal importance, but that's not how the plan was actually formed. And so bringing that forward in the zoning development, in the zoning bylaw, but then actually going out and finding funding for it. So that was something that the city and TCHC and Daniels did together. And we managed to get partway there with $24 million from the government. And then we needed another 10 to finish the building and another 2 to kickstart operations. So it was actually $12 million that was needed to finish the building. And we did work with Artscape through a whole capital campaign to raise those funds. And I think it was 3 nights before the opening, the lead donor walked away. And so we had a critical decision to make at that point, was how do we go forward? We're about to open the building. There was at that point a $4 million shortfall. And because of what we understood that Daniel Spectrum represented in the community, that real delivery of the community's vision in a whole section, not just a recommendation, a whole section of the social development plan, we approached the John and Myrna Daniels Charitable Foundation, and together with Daniels, the foundation and the Daniels Corporation came up with the $4 million that sort of topped off that building and that capital campaign. And that is one of the investments that we're most proud of, recognizing that the capital campaign was one thing, but how do we continuously support both the programs in that building and the long-term sustainability? So we've supported things like Under the Stars through the Regent Park Film Festival, the Regent Park School of Music, some of Art Heart's programming, and then through The Journey, which Marlene mentioned. And we've raised just through The Journey $4.7 million alone. And I'm proud to share for the first time in this room that by popular demand of the community, we will be taking The Journey into the city next year to Kerner Hall in downtown Toronto. So you'll be hearing from us about that and how we engage with local residents to sort of bring that story forward. And then the last example I'll give Fatima, when we fast forward to the refreshed SDP, was really hearing from the community, from agencies, from residents, what a challenge funding was and that constant grant cycle. And so we thought, can we create a funding pot that's specific to Regent Park that doesn't have 4 or 5 agencies applying to Metcalf and then Trillium and then competing against each other and then applying year after year. So we, with community agencies, approached the United Way Greater Toronto. They had a new CEO at that time, Daniele Zanotti, and said, here, how about a new way to think about community-based grant making? Let's make it participatory, community-led. Let's root it in the SDP priorities of community building, of safety, of communications, and of economic development, and then actually have the community members lead the decision making. And so the United Way, to their credit, embraced that approach, took on a $1 million fundraising campaign. And we, again, through our community investment, kickstarted that with a $250,000 contribution. So those are just some of the investments we've made in the community in direct response to the SDP.
Thanks, Hila. Okay. Mitchell, here's one for you.
What do you got?
So our audience might be wondering how come we were able to include affordable rental units at Evolve in Phase 3, which is a market building, but we weren't able to do integrated affordable housing units in condominium buildings in Phases 1 and 2. Did Daniels consider integrating in earlier phases?
Hello. With all due deference to our TCH friends who are in the audience, because this went well before your time. The question is really valid. How in building new communities can we really create integration? And it's not simple, but it is doable. And we did make many proposals along the way to our partners at Toronto Community Housing about integration. And we can't spend too much time looking back at that because it's not productive. But those proposals were turned down for a number of reasons. It was too complicated. We don't want to worry about condominium fees. We don't want to own units within a building. I think that may be evolving. There may be new ways that TCH becomes open to these kind of new models. But we made proposals because we want to find ways to integrate affordability into everything we do. We think it's really important. So when the opportunity did come along, when we were building a private sector market rental building in partnership with Sun Life, we talked to people at the city, at the Affordable Housing Office, the Secretariat, and they had some leftover funding for the possibility of integration of affordable rental into a market building. So they did a proposal call, and a number of people put forward proposals. Wood Green Community Services won that proposal call that the city managed, and they became then our partner at Evolve. And the program that we created with them, you referred to it, Partnership for Affordable Living, PAL. Everything needs an acronym, right? The PAL program is really, really powerful. And we would love to do it over and over and over again. We have proposed that to CMHC. We proposed that to the city. We're talking to the Affordable Housing Office about it because the integration of affordable rental into market rental seamlessly in a building, no one knows who is in an affordable unit. It's not a building that sits there as the affordable building. It's integration. We think there's a lot of merit for that. The other part of that program that we created, PAL, is that each of the sectors involved do what they do best. So we, private sector, buy land, take the risk on buying land, design buildings, build the buildings, take the enormous financial risk in building a building. And then operationally, take the risk as well that when the elevator breaks down, we're responsible for fixing it. But at the same time, enter a long-term head lease with a nonprofit agency. In this case, the winning bidder was Wood Green. They are not responsible when that elevator breaks down. They're not responsible when the concrete starts falling apart. The private sector is. What they're responsible for is finding, nurturing the tenants for long-term success, for integration, supporting those tenants, creating opportunities for those tenants to find training and further education. And so the nonprofit sector is doing what they do best. We, the private sector, this is a really replicable program, PAL. And we are knocking on doors every day to try to keep doing it. And we'll keep doing that. Are we up to question period? I mean, we could be.
I'm sorry, just while you're talking about this, but they all use the same entrance?
Yes.
They all use the same amenities?
Same elevators, same amenities. Thank you for raising that. I should have been clearer. These are buildings that are truly integrated. No, and if you look at Evolve, I mean, it's a brilliant building. There are 34 mother-led families living there that no one would know who they are. They're just part of the community. And literally, they have become so part of this community in so many ways. It's really phenomenal. So we will continue to knock on CMHC's door. We wish the province was more receptive to this kind of thing. They're not today. The city, we're going to continue to talk to the people at the Affordable Housing Office, the Secretariat, about whenever you have this kind of funding from anywhere, this kind of use is really cost effective. We're building the building. They're putting money in so that we can lease on a long-term head lease to Wood Green or a nonprofit at 80% of CMHC's average, which really, to be clear, is about 50% of market price. So it is very affordable. So we have tried, we will continue to try to find new ways. We think the down payment assistance program as well is a really powerful tool. And we worked with it when government put money into it back in the early days. As you saw, 17 families, households from Regent Park became homeowners by virtue of the foundation program. That is powerful stuff. Seriously. And unfortunately, government did not provide any more money to that program, or we could have kept going. So the Boost program was a much smaller 10%, as opposed to the much larger for the foundation. But we are continuing to look for ways to do this, and as Fatima mentioned, we decided, let's just do it ourselves. And at Daniels on Parliament, we put $5 million into a budget. You know, we got concrete, we got architects, we got all this stuff, we got interest on our financing, and we have $5 million in the capital cost to provide down payment assistance to 10, I think 9 right now, but 10 or 11 households to break the cycle of poverty. Because that's what it is when you're building equity. And again, we are pushing government to put more money into down payment assistance, but we're also pushing the foundations. You know, the foundations have a lot of money. A lot of money. And I don't want to try to take anything away from the need to invest in hospitals or in healthcare. It's essential. But we also know that a primary social determinant of health is housing. Eliminate homelessness, create affordable housing that's affordable in perpetuity, and we will reduce health care costs. So we'll keep trying.
Thanks, Mitchell. Maybe one last one for Gila before she
Goes to Australia.
goes to Australia virtually. So Gila, in the report, we say that although it was largely successful, implementing local hiring initiatives in Regent Park was not without its challenges. What were some of those challenges, and how did Daniels try to address them?
Thanks, Fatima. That one has been certainly a learning process that's ongoing, and there's folks in this room that know that even better than I do. You know, we have had successes, and Fatima, you talked or shared some of those numbers earlier, and challenges as well. I want to highlight one of the early things that helped us be successful, and that was having the Toronto Employment and Social Services actually have a storefront on Dundas Street. That was an early part of the revitalization in the first phase, and really instrumental in those early stages to get residents into that office, applying for jobs. And that was really important. What we started to recognize is we had gone out to our trades and our consultant, they were sending postings, and we weren't able to necessarily match the skill sets with the jobs or the educational requirements with the jobs or with the individuals that were applying. And so very early on, there was a focus on not just employment, but employment pathways, and really creating those pathways in early construction training programs, in food skills programs. So the partnership we did with the George Brown College and Paint Box Bistro, as an example, partnerships with George Brown College and Dixon Hall's Mill Center at that time to build construction skills, the Higher Learning Initiative with the University of Toronto's School of Continuing Studies, where they actually had folks come to Regent Park, assess the credentials of internationally educated professionals in the neighborhood, you know, give them a letter that said, you know, your equivalency is here, here's what courses you would need or what designations or certifications you would need to practice in your field in Canada, and then be ready for when the jobs come up. And so that's been part of the challenge, is really matching the skill sets to the opportunities available. It's been finding a range of jobs. As you mentioned, not everyone is looking for sort of full-time employment. So how do we create part-time opportunities within the community, not outside? How do we engage students in the summers? And the MTO program has been really crucial to that. How do we create opportunities for individuals that aren't looking for traditional employment outside of the home? So social procurement, and our sort of foray into social procurement has been completely, the credit is due to residents of Regent Park who approached us, Mitchell and I, in the early days saying, we are sewers, we are quilters, we are caterers. How can we be involved in the revitalization? And us thinking, okay, I remember that challenge. It was one of the first ones Mitchell brought to me was, here's a group of women in the community who are quilters. How do we engage them in the revitalization? And my thought was, well, short of giving everyone moving in a new quilt, how are we going to achieve this? And Mitchell and I went to their studio, which was in the base of a TCHC building, and saw that these quilts were beautiful works of art. And so we thought, hey, this could be an amazing art piece in a building. And so the very first quilt still lives today proudly at Paintbox condominiums. And so that tool for social procurement has become really important to breaking down some of those barriers to traditional employment, to local economic development. I can't go on without waving to Merwan in the room because of what we've learned with Merwan in terms of nurturing a local business and going from one or two small contracts with Infinigard for events to now having them be the security and concierge right next door at Artworks Tower. And our dream would be to see Infinigard, grow to Daniel's developments, not just across the city, but how does every developer, who has concierge and security services in their building go first to Infinigards or to local companies in their neighborhoods? And so that's been a real priority, is, not just looking at, traditional employment, let's do all forms of employment, entrepreneurship, business development. And I think we're getting there. We're certainly not there. We still have a lot to learn and do, but we are committed over the next several years to continue to do that.
Thanks, Gila. Awesome.
And with that,
Okay. And with that, yeah, maybe a good round of applause for Gila, who will maybe rejoin us for dinner later. Yeah. Cool. All right. Ramo, here's one for you.
Sure.
So the report highlights the living lane in phase 3 as a space that builds social fabric. How will it do that when it opens this summer? We're plugging that for everybody. What are some of the design elements that make this a community space?
So before, again, we sort of get into specifics of the living lane, I think we have to sort of, I looked at a plan recently that we used for presentations. And it's through Regent Park, phases 1, 2, 3. And it's looking at, when we looked at sort of living lane, we look at across the city, we look at moments, I like to call it. Where are certain areas of the cities that have certain moments for ourselves? Whether they be big moments, the big park, the athletic grounds, whether they're smaller moments in terms of courtyards or spaces that are created. And I have this plan in Regent Park that sort of highlights all these different moments and different sort of stages and places in Regent Park. And I think when we looked at, in phase 1, we created some townhouses with laneways in the back. And the vision always was, I grew up in Toronto, Italian background, grew up a lot around Dufferin and St. Clair, a lot of housing with laneways. That's where kids went to play. And when we were in the first phase, we created these laneways that were just at the back, and there was nothing to them other than laneways and garages. And the idea was they could become spaces where people engage. I'm not saying they're not, but there wasn't an intentionality around those laneways to make them maybe something a little bit more. And so again, when we looked at sort of phase 3 and we were looking at creating the athletic grounds, something a little bit bigger, it was, okay, so where are we going to create these smaller moments? I think one of those smaller moments is right across from the athletic grounds where you've got the TCHC townhouses with a different type of laneway that fronts onto the park. Makes the park look that much bigger in terms of how you create that. It's a different type of space. You've got a better or a different type of laneway with units that in phase 2 that face inwards along, we refer to it still as Block 22, but the TCHC building next to the Bartholomew, just south of that. And that laneway has inward-looking townhouses and a different type of laneway experience. And we looked at phase 3, we actually had these 2 large blocks that were what we refer to as 16, which is this block here, and 17. And it actually went all the way up to Oak Street. And there was a plan for maybe some townhouses, but call it more larger building mass. And so we wanted to look at an opportunity to break down these spaces. And I'll look to Jessica here from TCH because we actually work with Jessica's firm to create this idea of the living lane. We engaged and looked at how can we break down these blocks and how can we now create a laneway with intentionality. And so the idea was to create a space where services are lined up across from one another, because you really just need to get in and out and get garbage picked up, but you don't need a whole laneway to do that. And then afterwards it was, okay, what could we do landscaping-wise to still allow for cars to go through, because we needed that sort of egress, but cars don't go through there very often. So how can we make this a space around people coming together? And again, creating a different moment. And so the idea was around bike culture. And it was create our bike amenity spaces to be, or bike rooms to be at the back of these laneways where people come out and maybe put in some bike infrastructure for repairs that allows people to leave, come back, use those spaces for bike repairs, but also incorporate some, call it public art, in those spaces to make them engages, have some benches, have some areas to sit around, and also incorporate some live-work units. So it was around creating these spaces and then around those live-work units, have intentionality around who's going into those live-work units. And so it was around now looking at this reimagined laneway with a real sense of intentionality. And so the idea is to bring people or create spaces, and who knows, people may use these spaces differently than what we intended, but they're there and they're going to adapt and they're going to have these spaces where now you're going to go from River Street and you're going to have this vista of the aquatic center going right on through, and you could walk on through. You could close off these areas for smaller local gatherings or close off the street and allow them to spill into this area. We don't know what it's going to be exactly, but the purpose is there. There's a little bit more intentionality. And so I think that's sort of when we look at these spaces and we look at the plan, I think these are the little things that we learned through phase 1, where we created a laneway that really just had garages and a laneway and this idealistic remembrance of what we used to do in laneways, which isn't always the case. It's replicated now. Phase 2, we created a laneway again, but some intentionality, actually have units fronting onto the laneway and create a different type of experience there. And when we got to phase 3 again, looking at laneways a little bit differently and applying a little bit more intentionality. So the hope is that through this intentionality, we'll activate, animate, and really create buildings with 4 sides, because they have 4 public frontages. Sure, Marlene?
Are they sold, are they rented, how are they?
The live-work units?
Yeah.
So again, that again goes to the intentionality. Those are units actually that we retained in our ownership so that we actually could go out and rent them out to local artists, so that they have when they come in also, they take on this responsibility to engage. And a lot of what's happened already in this building here, there was a local artist that was very engaged and working in the community. I think they're actually moving over and have already moved over to
Already, yeah.
17, right?
Yeah, just next door. Yeah, so on that, I can elaborate on that a little bit. I mean, yeah, we exactly as Raymond was saying, we retained ownership there so that we could make sure that we were finding artists that were going to engage in the community. We actually have a social impact exchange as part of those leases, so they're required as part of their tenancy to do community engagement. And what's really exciting about the work live, I should say, units is that we've entered a partnership with the Black North Initiative. So specifically working over the last year with the Black North Initiative to identify Black artists who we know have challenges in accessing spaces that are affordable to live and create, to make sure that we're, carving out those spaces for folks to join our community. So that's really the idea. So now 4 artists have actually moved in to all 4 total. Yeah, 4 in total in the laneway. All of the artists have moved in March and April. So now it's fully occupied. And as the summer months come, we're going to be seeing them be a lot more active, right? Opening up their sort of garage door kind of style patios, being able to spill out onto the laneway, create programming for youth. I'll plug that there is a block party in the works that we're working on with the Work Live artists. That's going to be sort of their first introduction to the community. So a lot of really fun stuff to do there. But again, that intentionality that Ramo was talking about, it's exactly that. Finding those intentional, just those moments that you can create that interaction.
This
Yeah.
where 150 River is, like on the little lane.
So yeah, it's right between. So it's really.
The park is where.
Yeah, exactly. So another really interesting part about the laneway is, so we've got this building due east, the building right next door, Artworks, and then 150 River, and then also the TCHC building right back here. Yeah. And this laneway runs right between these. So the idea also is that it creates this opportunity for social interaction between folks living in market condos and folks living in Toronto community housing. So another space where you can have some of those interactions, those moments.
It's a shared space.
It's a shared space. And that's really the point of it.
Just another, I understand.
Yeah.
New condo owners, are they aware of that little lane there? Because when it's something like a party like that, we're loud. So I'm just saying, are they aware of that? Because
Are they aware it's a shared space?
no, I mean,
Or
like,
that it's going to be loud?
it's all the people
We-
there,
yeah.
because we don't want it, the police is coming. You know what I mean? It has to be.
Yeah.
Am I live?
No, it's,
I'm live.
Yeah, it's a great question, Inez.
The building or the codes, we can be loud till 11 o'clock at night. We can't be loud after 11 o'clock at night. And so people will party, people will potentially complain, and people will talk to each other. That's,
No, I know that, but it's just that it has to be transparency too, right? With the residents,
Yeah.
the owners of the condo.
sure.
Condo people are not the only people who complain or party. Because,
The-
did I finish what I had?
Of course, go ahead.
Thank you. So because I'm saying the reason why I'm bringing this, because it has happened before, right? Like even with Dixon Hall, kids are playing outside and people are complaining about the noise at 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Yeah, 2 p.m. where the kids they camp. So people have complained about that. Where there has come many police into there and saying, hey, there's a lot of noise, but it's 2 p.m. So that's why I'm just bringing that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. No, it's good to know and for us to be aware of that potential danger and to talk to the property management company and make sure that the owners or the tenants living in condominium units know what the situation is. I think that's a very good point. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
I think we're probably going
we at-
into, some questions. I think we've got one extra mic. Do we? Yeah, it's over there. Okay, cool. I'll ask, Waleed, if I could ask for your help, that would be great. If you want to. Oh, you want to hear folks morning?
So I'll quickly introduce myself for those who haven't met me. My name is Waleed Kogali Ali, and I'm the co-chair of the Community Building Working Group. Where's Rabia? Rabia's here? Yeah, Rabia is my fellow co-chair alongside Joel Klassen from YSM. And I'm also the resident, there's Rabia. And I'm also the resident co-chair of the Community Benefits Oversight Working Group, working with Shane Bourne from Toronto Community Housing. So thank you for being here. So I just want to give folks a warning. For those that are fasting, you can break your fast in about 6 minutes. So maybe what we can do is just make sure you have water around you so you're not dehydrated. Hopefully we can get some food and we can take some questions. And Mitch is going to be answering some of those questions and alongside everyone else here, right? Okay, so who would like to ask the first question? Ines?
Oh, sure, go for it.
Go ahead.
Well, I moved in, I was at 295 Gerard Street, now it's gonna be a condo. Like I said before, for me, it was hard to believe until I got, because there used to be phases 1 to 6 the first time. And then, because I was in one of those, our corner was a lot of shifted. We went from 1 to 6, 5, 4, 3. So for me, when they told us that we're moving the next phase of 3, that it was a change, I go, I don't believe it until I get my letter. So when I got my letter, I was jumping up of joy. I moved into my new building. I live at 21 Tubman. I love my building. I love my home. I'm very grateful for all the work that you guys have done. I could bring people to my house compared to the old building. I mean, there's a lot of memories, but I'm building more memories now in my new building. But I love my new place. I just want to say thank you for all the hard work. I know I gave you guys a lot of heart, kept you guys on your toes, but that's why we're here for. So, and we all learn along the way. But I love my home. I just want to say thank you. And I was just asking about the party because I'm a party girl. So, thank you.
Thank you. Am I live? No, I'm not. Yes, I am. Thank you. That's very
Miguel's got a
nice.
question.
Appreciate that.
Miguel?
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Miguel, and I've been in discussion with Tridel via Fatima for the last year and a half to seek opportunities for a land trust agreement with regards to the presentation center. That piece of land has been, allocated for sales office. We want to have the first opportunity, the indigenous people to have an indigenous co-op in Regent Park. Are you willing to negotiate this agreement if we are successfully to incorporate, because we are in discussions now online, to seek opportunities for a land trust at that property, 500 down the street east. This land is empty. As you know, we have a housing crisis in Toronto, and this opportunity will be tremendous to address the lack of affordability in housing. Many of our residents, our children are being displaced by outside residents. Our children don't have opportunities for rent to own or to own home ownership. That's what we want to address. Because with TCAC, the internal waiting list is 10 years now? So we don't want to see our children being displaced and be sent outside this community, because this is where they grew up. This is where they went to school. This is when they went to the community center and the aquatic center that you speak so proudly of. So this is the discussion we're going to be having in 2023. So I would like to have your commitment, Michael, because this is very important to achieve reconciliation and truth with indigenous people. Thank you. So that's the question I have for you.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, but you won't get a commitment this evening. Can you hear me? Did this get turned down a little bit? You're okay. No, I appreciate the question. There is absolutely a need for more affordable housing in Regent Park. There's no question about that. And we've said that earlier, and we have, over the years, tried to increase, and we've done that to some degree of success. The site that you're talking about, the Presentation Center site, is a site that's co-owned by ourselves and our partners from Toronto Community Housing. We're in a discussion as we speak about the future of that. That site has been very important in terms of a place from which the revitalization started. You know, some of you were there on day one when we opened up that building for the very first time. there were many people who told us, don't put a presentation. I know I'm going off topic, Miguel, but I'll get back to it. There were many, many people who told us to put the presentation center outside the community. There were many, many people who told us, do not name the new community Regent Park. And it was ridiculous. So we put our foot down and say, no, this is Regent Park, and we're going to put a presentation center right in the community. And the day we opened it, we invited everyone from the community in for a potluck dinner. We hosted, catering people participated. And that has been a very important part, that as a base for us, as a management office, as a place, before Spectrum was built, before the new community center was built, that place hosted board meetings, it hosted so many different things in the community. Miguel, you're right. Now is the time to begin thinking about the future of those lands. And as partners, we are beginning to have that discussion. That discussion will include, is it possible to increase the number of affordable rental units that are in Regent Park? That discussion will include, is it possible to also include some additional affordable ownership opportunities in Regent Park? That's what we're beginning to think about. How do we increase affordable rental? How do we increase affordable ownership? Can we create a building that, has all of those components together, and potentially, affordable commercial on the ground floor fronting onto Dundas? We're just starting those conversations because now's the time to start. Our final community that we're building on our own, Daniels in phase 3, Daniels on Parliament, it's under construction. But now with our partner, we can begin to look at that final phase, which is the final phase between us. And no, we can't and we won't make a commitment to any specific group. We will develop a process by which a number of groups will be able to respond and say, we are the right group to be able to develop some affordable housing within this overall site. That's the commitment to a process that we hope will result in some affordable housing. But keep in mind, Miguel, the creation of more affordable housing will require more money from the federal government, the provincial government, the City of Toronto waiving property taxes, and this community will have to push that agenda for that to happen. Because the money isn't there today. It's not. So easy to say for all of us, we need more affordable housing. Guess what? We need more affordable housing. But to get it, it takes all those levels of government and ourselves and our partner working together. That's what we're working towards. Thank you.
Well said, Mitch. Thank you so much. We're going to have Ishmael and then Dini. Ishmael first.
Just before we do that, I want to just let people know that if you are
Start.
fasting,
Now
that
to
you
eat, yeah.
can eat now. So we do have dates where the food is in the back on the left-hand side, and there's water at the tables and cups and all of that. So if you're fasting and you need to break a fast, you can do that. And then we'll wrap the questions up after these two questions, and then we can all get something to eat.
Exactly. Ishmael?
Yeah, my question is, I think there's undoubtedly no question around the impact Daniels has made towards this community. I think even the quote I made around that you may be responsible for the rise of resident leadership is quite accurate. My question is in terms of the legacy and the end result. Originally, you were conceptualizing to have all the phases of revitalization. That has not happened. The question I want to ask is the intentionality that has to go towards the end of that impact. And I'm speaking about opportunities for community commercial. I know that there have been several attempts to do that. And my concern is, can we get a viable, affordable community commercial that's sustainable as a lasting impact from Daniels? I know that there's some complications as to why it couldn't happen before, but could we co-design a process where we make that viable? And I know that poverty reduction is not just about jobs, it's also about creating pathways that are intergenerational. So can we create, co-design a viable community commercial as a lasting impact in Regent Park? Thank you.
Should I take this?
I can start it a little bit. So, Ismail, yeah, I think that you're totally right. When we talk about community commercial, this opportunity to find opportunities in retail or office spaces for local entrepreneurs, organizations, nonprofit organizations, agencies, et cetera, to access those spaces at below market rates or subsidized rates, to make them sustainable as well, to make sure that those groups can have a home here in some sort of permanent-ish fashion, to serve the community. We've been working on ways to make that a reality for the past several years. And it's true, we had a call for proposals in 2018, had two amazing enterprises that were going to come into commercial spaces, one across the street, one in this building directly, just at the other end of the hall. And working with community partners, one of them was the Center for Opportunity for Regent Park Enterprises. The Center for Learning and Development brought that forward. It was a catering kitchen, a sewing studio. We worked with the Center for Learning and Development for 2 years working on a business model to make that work. We carved space for a dumbwaiter, which is a fancy word for special elevator, into the building so that they could, bring up and down caterings. And COVID hit, and that plan fell through, right? Because organizations weren't able to take the kind of risks in that environment, right? So we've had these opportunities arise, and through the pandemic and things like that. Same thing happened with our latest commercial call, just for next door at Artworks in 2020. Had a great opportunity with a hair salon, a young woman who grew up in the neighborhood who was really eager to do training and employment opportunities for folks from Regent Park. Also fell through. Pandemic casualties, some of them. But we continue to innovate and find opportunities. When we're working with the Employment and Economic Development Table, and Gail and Ismail, we've been having these conversations about the pathway for entrepreneurship. And we've been thinking a lot about the end goal, which is standalone retail, right? And thinking about, okay, maybe we need to think about shared space retail. Maybe we need to think about micro retail. And so, when Mitchell's talking about opportunities at maybe the presentation center lands, and even Daniel's on Parliament, I think there's still opportunities to tweak this model of community commercial that we've been trying to implement thus far. And together, like you're saying, find opportunities to say, actually, maybe we need to adapt for entrepreneurs in the neighborhood who want to have shared space. A couple of maybe 2, 3, 4 different enterprises sharing a space to help kind of launch those small businesses on the path to standalone retail. So we definitely are eager to work with the community to find ways to make that work. 'Cause we've been trying, and we will continue to try, because we know it's an important way to build community wealth.
Well said.
Maybe I could just add a touch to that. We think there is a path forward, and we're continue to talk to all of you about what that path is, with plans for opportunities in Daniels on Parliament, potentially with plans on the presentation center site. So we're not going to give up on this, because it's so important. And I think we can create a model through discussion, further discussion, and that's a model that we can then all take on the road. Toronto Community Housing can take it on the road to other communities. And all of us can talk about how, this ain't easy. It is not easy for all kinds of reasons. The impediments to local entrepreneurs, we've run into them, we've found them. We work with caterers who, don't want to and can't declare income because it hurts their TCH rent that they're paying. Because the minute that they're actually getting income, they need to report it and their rent goes up, or their OW payments go down. There are some real structural challenges in terms of entrepreneurship, building businesses, that are hard for us to address. We're going to continue to try, and we'll continue to try to do it right here for as long as it takes.
Thank you, Mitch, for that very thoughtful answer. And I hope our friends at T60 are listening, because that's very important. Friends, Dini is going to be the last question before we get some food. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, here you go.
Then I'm going to have to ask my question very fast, because I know people are very hungry. And I just wanted to ask you about your role as a landlord. I've been giving Fatima a very hard time for a period of time now about the fact that when she talks about winding down, when you are finished with the build and you're finished as developers. And I keep saying, but you are still here as landlords. You're commercial landlords. So to me, I just wanted to know, I know Daniels has a reputation for corporate responsibility and investing. And I understand that it's almost like a different division, the division that handles the retail, your real estate, kinda. But so I'm wondering about the long-term investment in the community, even when you're finished with your build. Will there still be a commitment and an investment in the Regent Park community as stakeholders of the community, as landlords?
So happy you asked that question. Seriously. Because maybe this goes back to the very front end of, the question that Fatima asked me. We've been committed to this community from day one. Not even knowing it back when I was in the Gardens Apartments, and the experience I had there led to this commitment that is an ongoing commitment. It's not going to change. Yes, we still have more years of construction with Daniels on Parliament. Yes, with our partner, we're going to build on the presentation center site. That is still a number of years of development and construction. But beyond that, as you've so rightly pointed out, we are owners of commercial. In phase 3, owners in commercial that we own on our own. And in phases 1 and 2, in partnership with Toronto Community Housing on some of the assets that have been built under condominium buildings. So we're here, and there's a division of Daniels that manages it, but the ownership team, which is me and our team, we own the commercial. There's nobody else. This is us. We own the commercial. We're committed to this neighborhood. We have been for many, many years, and we are forever.
Excellent. Okay, my friends, let's have some food, and thank you so much for being here.
So just to let you know, food available, there's some vegetarian options as well.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on social media, and for more information, check out our website.